Hello everyone, welcome to our webinar in the first one in Q1 in 2020, and I'm very excited to talk about growth hacking user adoption. My name is Jussi. I'm a user adoption expert and Microsoft MVP since 2013, working with Habit as a product evangelist and also taking care of marketing. With me in the call today, we have Señor Rodrigo Cervantes.
Senor. Hi. Thanks. I like the introduction. Yeah, well, I'm Rodrigo Cervantes. I've actually, Jussi asked me to join and give a little bit of an input on growth hacking. So thinking on the topic of user adoption and how can we address it. A little bit about my background is that I've been doing design thinking, service design, business modeling for like about 10 years now. I've worked at Alto University coaching like startups on these creative and lean processes, as well as doing consulting for companies like Audi in Foxborough Global, UNICEF in Uganda, the Ministry of Production in Peru, amongst others, and here in Finland, some companies like G.R.O.W.S.
Cool.
So that's just a little bit about me, and now happy to be chatting about Habit with Jussi.
Yeah, so it's going to be interesting discussion today. Growth hacking is really a trendy topic at the moment, especially in the startup scene. So using mindset and different tools to hack growth of engagement or of sales or something like that. And we actually believe that growth hacking tools and mindset is actually really useful to also drive user adoption within organizations when it also comes to Office 365 services or whatever you actually want to bring across. So let's get started. User adoption is a journey. It's never done in only just, let's say, one big bang type of approach. It starts somewhere, and you should have a goal, and reaching that goal will take some time and different obstacles and challenges. But what do we look in this webinar today? So we start a bit from the challenges of user adoptions to the achievement of goals and the transformation of user engagement. And for that, we look into the different or the right mindset and tools basically to go from zero to hero. So that's basically the journey we want to take you guys on this webinar. Thanks again for taking the time and joining us in here. So what are challenges of users? I think this is maybe one of the biggest ones. So are you afraid of change? You may be if you're changing here. But the thing is that the constant thing in life is change. So when we are in a work environment, we get new things we need to take care of or learn almost on a daily basis. And especially with the cloud technologies and Office 365, there is new stuff coming out or getting thrown at the users almost on a weekly basis. So there's constant change happening. And in general, when users faced with change, there is this kind of fear emotion or a blockade. So there needs to be a way to overcome this fear of change. What else? As I have said already, there are changes happening almost on a weekly basis. So there's this information overflow, which is really stressful for users because they have new stuff to learn. There is new ways to do things. There is change happening in ways of working, new tools, more, let's say, communication channels rather than simplified communication. So there's a lot of information happening at the same time, overflowing the user on the daily work. So that also leads to the next challenge, which is kind of the attention of a human is around 8 seconds at the moment, and that's even lower than the average attention span of a goldfish. So by meaning, if you want to really get your message across or tell something or get a person hooked on something, you need to do that within 8 seconds. So if you don't get the person hooked on the message you want to bring across, within 8 seconds, you have already lost. Also, people act based on their expectations and not based on their desires. So why did we put the euro millions in here? So for instance, as a small example, I'm pretty sure that all of you would like to win in the lottery, but I'm also pretty sure that not many of you have bought a lottery ticket. So that's exactly the point of this, that people act based on their expectations, not based on their desires. And this is, if you know something like this, it's a bit of a challenge, of course, because people might be communicating their desires, but they might still not really act on them. So if you know that fact, then you might have a chance to actually have a good story to get your users engaged. What desires users may have? So there are usually two types of desires. We have external desires or internal desires. So external desires is for instance, what it could be for users, it could be like getting things done faster and easier at work. So you would have like more free time, or you would have time to do actually real work and not, for instance, looking for documents and how finding out how to share it to the right person, that only that person can see it and things like that, so that you can really be productive. That might be an external desire of a user within a work environment, especially when it comes to collaboration and information management. Internal desires might be like being recognized for the work done, have like more communication and collaboration going on, and also have like more deep relationship with coworkers, that you really create this type of environment where users can help each other, where you can find information easier, where there is no fear of sharing information within the organization. So this might be an internal desire of a user. How is it nowadays? We hit the wall with user adoption. So old methods like we have known right now, they just don't work anymore in a world which is constantly changing. And I have seen that so many times during my career as a consultant, also as a change manager and as a professional trainer of Office 365 and SharePoint, that people, they're just overwhelmed with the functionalities and the different tools and different changes which are coming all the time. So there needs to be a change in the way how we address the problem of user adoption. Often you also hear that, user adoption is too hard, we cannot do this, or it's too expensive. We cannot hire a team of communication experts to actually help our users. We cannot train everyone in the company and things like that. So these are the walls what we are hitting also as consultants, trying to help people out there to work with the technology. But it's also kind of a wall what people build for themselves. I always say that user adoption is in that way as important that you wouldn't either let just some random person drive with the Formula 1 car on a race. So you would need to want to train that person to go drive with that. If you don't do user adoption or you just neglect it, it will cause you much more pain and much more money than when you would really address it in a nice way. But okay, how can we overcome this? So I think, or we believe that we found the way to actually solve this problem, and that's why we come here now to the core of this presentation about growth hacking, user adoption. And now actually I would like to give the word to Rodrigo to explain us a bit what growth hacking actually is.
Alrighty, thanks, Jussi. You did quite a good job at setting up the challenge. So pretty much when you come to the plan, what are we actually going to do? We started thinking that probably one plan could be to actually use growth hacking more as a mindset, let's say, to how to tackle a challenge. But what is growth hacking? So originally growth hacking, it was a marketing technique that was used to do kind of, that is based on quick, fast experiments that you run over and over, you learn from them, and the faster you experiment, the more you learn. However, I've actually have people come to me and say that, well, if this was a marketing technique, how can I use it in my own business? Like, how can I use it if I'm, I don't know, a consultant that is doing administrative work? How can I use it if I'm a banker? In this case, how can we use it if we are actually doing onboarding, like if I'm doing trainings? What I usually say to everyone is that growth hacking now has been mystified as focused on the tools, whereas the actual core of it is a mindset. The tools are just something that you use to bring to life kind of like the new perspective that you have, where you are actually using all these different ways and trying different ways to solve a problem. And you're always focusing on growth, either growth in the way that you're efficient, you're growing in the way that, in this case of that, new employees are onboarded, how well do they learn to use the new tools? So it's just focusing on growth. And actually, if you take, for example, two growth hackers and you ask them to grow any type, to do a growth hacking exercise on every product or service, they're most likely going to take different tools. Everyone will use the tools and experiments that you feel the most comfortable with. So this is not like a one recipe that works for everyone. It's some mindset where you accept that you are going to, for example, look for new options on how to solve your problem. For example, if we were thinking about user onboarding, we could say like, okay, context-driven training. That could be a new way to do it. It's a mindset where you kind of like consider what are the different formats in which I can build my content, and what are the different channels I can give it. I can promote it and give it. How can I provide support that is in a timely manner, or kind of like, maybe on demand. This is kind of like the mindset that we should be adapting. Could you change to the next slide, please?
Sure.
So before, I'm gonna bombard you with loads of explanations about the processes and comparisons. If anyone has a question, just feel free to interact or ask. But let's say, to understand a bit of what growth hacking mindset is, we have to consider where does it come from. We have to know a little bit about it. So growth hacking actually comes from design thinking, which was developed in the early 1990s, actually 1991, by a guy called David Kelly. He was actually one of the first ones that coined the phrase, the term design thinking. And then he opened a company called IDEO, which was the first kind of like creative processes driven design thinking consulting company. Pretty much what they were doing was that they were using principles that were made for design to solve business problems. So this is a source, and the process was divided in 5 phases. In the first one, you were emphasizing, which means that you're benchmarking and you're trying to understand a problem. You try to define the problem, but then as you move on to the second stage, which was definition, you have to define what's the important thing of the problem. What is the one problem that you want to tackle? And you define that or create an objective on that issue that you want to tackle. Then the third step of the third phase of the process was ideate. So you start throwing all different types of ideas, brainstorming any kind of, technique that you would know to propose different solutions that could be later prototyped and tested. And you would go back again to the process and iterate on your prototypes as tests until you would come up with something that would be sufficient enough for you. If we look at this process, then we realize from the part of ideate, then it comes, growth hacking. Growth hacking especially this process of growth was made very popular in 2000. Actually, it was created and made popular in 2016 by G.R.O.W.S. So this one actually takes the principles of design thinking, but it focuses it more on fast experimentation. So again, you have the the G.R.O.W.S has a first stage, which is gather ideas. Then you rank your ideas using different sets of tools. Then you experiment, like you outline your experiment. Let's say you prototype it, then you run it, then you study it, and you run the cycle again.
Yeah.
So these are kind of like this is what growth hacking is mostly about. Running through this cycle over and over as fast as you can, and making all of your decisions based on data.
Yeah, that's a very, very important point. Make your decision based on data and not based on opinions.
Exactly. Right? So if you can go to the next slide.
Yeah.
I wanted to show a little bit more of a, to go a little bit deeper into what we were doing, like in growth hacking or these design thinking processes. I also wanted to compare the two processes like parallel. And the main point of this slide, which I wanted to kind of like everyone that is joining us to focus on, is what type of data you are using at which stage of the processes.
Yeah.
So, for example, in the first part of the process, when you are understanding your target audience or, the user of a service or who's going to be the person consuming a product, you have to focus on your hard data. You really look inside your numbers. That is the part that will really ground you and will give you're trying to paint a clear picture where you're at or what you want to achieve. Then the second part is like soft data, and this is one of the fun parts about design thinking and actually of growth hacking, because this is where you use canvases and templates to understand the person that you are trying to reach or the soft motivators of people that are consuming your services. So let's say if we're talking about user adoption and onboarding, then we trying to understand the feelings and the expectations of people that are joining a new company and are given a whole new set of tools, and how can we actually make it easier for them.
Yeah, so in marketing terms, this is called target audiencing, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that's what you do there, but also you would need to do that for the onboarding part as well, so it makes a lot of sense.
Exactly, so that's what we were trying to, I think that this is where, when you brought the challenge of can we growth hack onboarding, it was like, yeah, of course, because we have a clear target audience. Yeah. And this was one of the common points where we could start working from it. And actually, we could even run it like full on the process, thinking of the pirate funnel. So actually to use a tool that is used for marketing, but we could use it here as well, where we understand, awareness is pretty much when, the journey of a new employee when it comes, like awareness would be he comes to the office and he realizes, oh, I have to learn all this new stuff.
Yeah.
And then acquisition is pretty much when he's getting the first touch points and getting to know the tools, like he sits in his table and he goes like, well, this is our invoicing program.
Yeah.
Then activation is actually the first interactions that he's having with it. Retention, how often, once he starts to use it, if he's actually liking the tool, or if he's going to go back to maybe try something that he already knows that will kind of do the same job, but it's not exactly what we want him to do.
Yeah.
And then, I think in this case, revenue, we could just say that we could change that one for return of your investment of a digital tool. Right. So if you invested on a digital tool that was supposed to make your team more efficient, but then they're using something else, then your investment is lost, and the efficiency, the improvements you were trying to reach will not happen.
Yeah, Rodrigo, one question: why is it called pirate funnel? Is it because of the abbreviation R?
Yes, because R, Captain.
Awesome.
Yeah, we design thinkers have very, very, growth hackers have very deep sense of humor.
Yeah, I know that. That's very good. That's very good, especially when it comes to user adoption, where most people feel more pain than fun. Having humor is very important.
I think, a lot of these processes are also focused on understanding, drivers and motivation of people. Yeah. And if you are not able to make it simple and, let's say, familiar to the people that you're trying to work with and that you're trying to develop the concepts with, then you get to face some sort of a little bit of a challenge where they say, like, I don't think this is going to work, that initial reaction. So being able to laugh about ourselves and present some of our faults and difficulties is kind of like also something very useful in this type of work, which I think it's also something critical for when you are engaging with people to do onboarding or user adoption.
Yeah, exactly. All right.
So, yeah, and then of course the third part, that you're focusing on experimentation, which will actually give you analytics. And based on those analytics or the data that you're gathering from your experiments, that's where you you take decisions on if this is something, or this experiment or this training that I'm delivering to X group of employees is working or not, and is it something that I should scale up to, maybe on a organizational level. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
So I think at first glance, this looks like a complicated chart, but the whole idea was just to focus on, and remember to use data to make decisions.
Yeah, very good point.
Yeah, could you throw in the next slide?
Sure.
So after, working on the process and going back and, going through round and round the cycle a few times, I think that it was actually it was a good exercise to think about how could we do a G.R.O.W.S for onboarding? What will we be focusing on, for example? So the first stage would be gathering ideas. So gathering ideas on user adoptions, benchmarking, how other companies are doing it, not only focus on your own company, but, do some Google search, talk to, maybe colleagues that have moved to other companies to see what are they doing. How are they doing their trainings? What new tools are there? What new channels is, the more ideas you gather, the better it is when you actually have to generate the ideas and then rank them. So you can generate ideas, for example, maybe in this case, we thought of pushing or facing off contextual versus traditional trainings. And then as something new that we could try, we thought gamification.
Mm-hmm.
So, the more info you have, the more ideas you're going to be able to generate, and the easier it's going to be, you can rank them. You can rank them in several ways. There's many tools, but I think the eyes technique is one of the most easy ones to apply. And it's a tool widely used by growth hackers and anyone that is doing creative service design or creative processes. Pretty much you're evaluating your ideas on how easy they're going to be able to do. You can do them. The amount of resources that it will take it to actually build a prototype or test your idea, and the impact that it's going to have. So those three things, you grade them from 1 to 10, and then you get kind of, you take an average and you can see visually which one would be the easiest one with the highest impact, and that requires the least amount of resources from me to actually implement my test.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, then once you kind of like rank your ideas, then in our G.R.O.W.S process, we were thinking, okay, content delivery, channels, and feedback. So you plan the experiments. Now you have a list of maybe 10 ideas. You take your top 2 ideas, and then we think about, okay, what content do we need to build for, do we need to have to be able to execute this idea? How are we gonna deliver it? And how can we collect, measure if this is useful or not for our target audience? So again, going back to user adoption, I think the content would be, okay, we create videos, that could be like YouTube videos to support the new employee. We can create maybe step-by-step guides.
Yeah.
You can create infographics. We're going to deliver those maybe, as I said, like contextual by an actual training on site, or maybe something that would be phone driven, or there are many different technologies that you can use now, or personal, or coaching from people that are already within the company to new employees, and then of course set up the channels to collect the feedback. Moving on, the fourth stage, it would be just once you have the test, quickly, once you have in mind the test, quickly build it and experiment. Throw it to one business unit, to maybe one team, one or a few new employees that are being hired, and then see how they react. And that's when you go to stage number 5, which would be go through analytics, see the reaction, see the engagement. You see it's something that they felt that was useful, and then iterate on that. So what I mean by iterate is that if you see that it's working, you fix it, and you fix, some of the recommendations that you got from the feedback and the analytics, you work on those. Or if your results say that YouTube really didn't make any difference, watching the video was as useful as hearing an ad, then you can ditch it and go for your next idea. And the benefit of it is that if you think of fast experimentation with low resource cost, if it doesn't work, it's not a failure. It's actually a learning.
It's exactly. I just wanted to say, if something doesn't work, it's actually almost as good as if you find something what works, because you know
I would
exactly
say that
what you shouldn't use in the future.
Yeah. And failure is something that failure is valuable in a sense that, think of this situation. When I was looking for a girlfriend, I didn't know who was the person what type of girl I was looking for, but I did know what I didn't want.
Yeah.
So that made finding the right person for me at the end easier. And it's the same here. Yeah. I might not know exactly what type of process or engagement will be the most useful for my user adoption in my own company, but I do know what doesn't work. And I started from that premise. I narrow the field, and I can be creative in the area, testing a whole array of other options, different from the ones that I know for sure that won't work.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
super interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, I hope I was able to convey a little bit in a very short, let's say condensed example, a little bit of what growth hacking is, and the mindset of don't be afraid to experiment, don't be afraid to fail, and the more you experiment, the more you learn.
Okay, cool. Hey, thanks a lot. Now let's look a little bit more concrete how this could look like and what tools there are to actually let's say realize or manifest this idea. So let's first look a little bit about conflicts. So when you always come with a new approach, there will be a resistance against that. Also, if something doesn't work, usually it's the story what doesn't really hit the audience. So that's why it's important to understand who are my users and what type of information do they like to receive. And to really find the right message to the right type of audience is the key in here. And that's actually what with growth hacking you actually are doing in the end. So how can you achieve your goals? Persistence is key. So don't give up. If after the first growth sprint nothing works, then again, as we said before, failure is actually almost as important as succeeding. As already mentioned before, users have a really short attention span, so you need to create hooks to get attention to the users. So maybe in the media world we call them clickbaits. They are clickbaits for exactly this reason, because if you wouldn't have a clickbait, users, they would just not look at your content. And when you do user adoption, you actually want users to engage with your content, to read something that they start learning. And that's the main thing of user adoption, to kind of transfer knowledge from somewhere to your audience, which are your end users. So create a story which triggers emotional response. We humans are emotional beings, that's just a fact. Also, and especially in business context, this is very important. So users always act according to an emotion, and they try to reason that emotion logically in their mind. So this is how humans act. If you don't have any emotional response, it will be really hard to drive users to do something. In the end, offer, but not force solutions to the users. Say, hey, look, according to that XYZ, we found out this is the way to go. Do you agree? Yes, no. If the user doesn't agree, then you go and look at it. Why not? And then you adapt and give the offer again. Never ever force a user to do something or to not do something, because this is the birthplace of shadow IT. Then create, test, measure, and adapt, and repeat that until you meet goals, as we have heard many, many times from Rodrigo before. So one of my favorite quotes from Simon Sinek, people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. Again, here, that's the story, the emotional trigger. Why do I need to do this? What is in it for me in order to change my behavior? I have worked for 20 years that way, and suddenly some company comes and changes everything. Why should I do that? And if you get the person to understand the why, then you will have change. So what tools are there to achieve transformation? So 2 more quotes before we go there. The fortune is in the follow-up. Keep that in your mind. And assumption is the mother of all failures. So that's why it is very, very important to actually have the raw data to see what works and what not. So what could we do? We could, for instance, do an automation of communication, and we can do contextual learning in order to drive user adoption. So let's look at the first one now. Automation of communication. So there are tools out there where you can analyze what users engage with. So for instance, if you have a messaging campaign within your organization where you're going to bring a message across, there are tools where you can go and analyze where the users are clicking on that particular email. So you can see, do they react on my call to actions, by meaning on my buttons? Do they actually do that what I want them to do? And with these tools, you can analyze that actually, is this working what I'm planning to do with my users? And according to that, you figure out, okay, maybe I need to do some changes in my headline. I need to do some changes in my story. I need to change the position of a button somewhere. Only the position change can have a huge impact, as we have learned in the last few months while doing marketing automation for Habit. Also analyze where are users, when they click, what are they looking at? Are they looking at the right pages? Are they looking at the right content I want them to learn or to understand? So if you just shout it out into the forest and not look at it, what's going on, then of course you will never know, is my thing working or is it not? So with those tools, it's actually really easy to figure out, okay, are my users actually looking at the content I want them to, and are they actually also interacting with the content? Also get like a big picture of communication measures. So for instance, this is a screenshot from the invitation we have done for this webinar, and the open rate has been really good. So almost 40 or almost 50%, which is for email campaign extremely well. So we figured out, okay, actually we have sent the invitation to the right audience and they are actually looking at it. So and that's the whole thing of the growth hacking. We don't want to show the wrong message to the wrong person. So that's the key thing of advertising. If I want to advertise my product to the person who's actually looking to buy a product like this, and that's the whole clue here. So with over time you will figure out, or you will know your audience really well. You will know how your users behave and what type of content works for them and what not. For some people, infographics will work. For some people, videos will work. For some people, just text will work. Others, they can only learn while they do things. People are different, and just trying to generalize things is very difficult and not working at all. Also, look where the traffic goes. So you can see, okay, I did this messaging campaign and I see 30 people are looking at the email. I can go and follow up with those people who don't look at the email automatically, basically. And then you can see, okay, do I actually get the traffic on my pages or on the content on the pages? Do I actually get them there? So can I get the traffic flow to the content I want them to show? And this is the thing what you can do with, for instance, this conversion report by click dimensions, that you can really see, okay, from that particular source, I got the traffic on the page and I could see that they have clicked on it to look at it. Also, automate as much as possible. So all this, or one of the main problems what I hear all the time with customers is that we don't have time to do this communication. We don't have time and the money and the resources to do user adoption. But user adoption is about communicating a message over and over and over again. So when it comes to a person getting a message, it needs about 7 times that the user sees that message that it actually goes from the through the filter on the brain into the subconscious. So 7 times. Imagine having like a person needing to take a phone or a training to actually bring that message across, not with the help of automation tools. It's really, really difficult. So therefore, there are tools out there what marketers use in growth hacking to actually automate this stuff. And most companies, they even have these tools in use, or they have them somewhere, but they just don't use them because they don't know, or they think, okay, this marketing automation is actually only for the marketer hoodie wearing hippies out there. Oh, sorry, not hippie, hipsters. But
hey, I take that personal.
Come again.
I take that personal.
I'm sorry, you're not a hippie. Yeah, but I became one myself. So anyway, so you can use these tools to actually turn the communication also inside and use the same tools like that. So you can just set up the whole machine once and then let it roll. And with the tools, you can figure out, okay, is it actually working or not? So with the growth hacking mindset. So this is kind of the communication automation part, but then when you have people looking at your content, what then? So what you want to do with those people who actually look at your content? So you want them to look at the right content, and there kind of the contextual like learning comes into place. That actually I give them the things in front of their nose what they would want to learn and look at during my learning experience or during my onboarding phase. So for instance, here I got an email campaign saying, hey, there's a new process, go click here, have a look at that. The user goes there and actually can see the step-by-step guidance through it once the user comes to the location. Also, for instance, for us growth hackers or as marketers, we can go and have a look into statistics saying, okay, do the users actually look at my content or do they not? So I can see which type of learning content is then actually working for the user or is being consumed and which not. So this also helps for me to figure out, hey, is the content I'm creating, is that actually something helpful or useful for my end user, right? So this is just a small example what can be done in order to also, after the user driving somewhere, to actually further keep up the engagement with the person with the onboarding process. Good. So a concrete process example, how could it look like? So I would, for instance, create content for an email or a messenger campaign to, let's say, learning how to modify SharePoint sites, for instance. I would have different messages created in video format, and maybe in quick guides, in maybe a short step-by-step manuals or something like that. So I would have different ones of those created, I would then set up a marketing and automation machine or a follow-up system, which will actually in the end drive them to your content to look at. So you would run the first email campaign. You will see how many would open it. For those who have opened it, you will then see, are they actually really looking at the content? For those who don't open it, you can then send another reminder and another reminder and another reminder until you have basically everyone driven through that process or that content you want them to look at. So you would deliver the content on the website through the contextual framework or on a classical way, but important is that you get the metrics out there to see actually, are my people going to that particular site or not? And then you would analyze the performance of the mails, message opens, the conversion rate of traffic to your websites, and then also analyze the content consumption on top of the site you have driven the traffic to. And then you would adapt your campaign to increase the conversion rate. So you will see, is it converting great or not? So if you send out, let's say, 1,000 emails and only 10 open it, then maybe there's something wrong with your story, or you don't have a hook there that people get hooked in looking at it. So imagine when people have their Outlook open or their messaging system, they get bombarded all the time. So you need to kind of find a way to get them hooked, look at your message, and actually drive them through a whole experience, going from 0 to hero, basically. So yeah, you adapt the campaign, you look at the clicks of the website and so on, and then you decide if you would need to create a new campaign, or you see that campaign is actually working. I will just tweak it and I will rerun it, or then you say, hey, I will duplicate this campaign and actually use this for something else again. And like this, you over time get much better and have much more knowledge about how my users are working with information and receiving information. So on a conclusion on user engagement, in the end, your opinion on what works and what doesn't really matter. It's a bit a harsh thing, but this is actually how it is. Only the opinion of the market matters. So that's the whole point of the growth hacking and the analysis, and that what Rodrigo said about looking at data. So I could think I make the greatest user manual ever. I send it out and no one looks at it, and I was like, why? But maybe I just had the wrong opinion. I didn't know, or if something has changed. So that's why there is this really fast failing forward mindset is very important. It's totally fine to fail. And we would say that there are no more excuses that there is no more time or money for user adoption. We have learned now that we can build once, we can reuse, we can recycle content, we can deliver content where it's needed the most, and we can know that we can actually automate communication of our message into the organization. Okay, and like this, we are through right on time with our content. So are there any questions on the line?
Apparently we don't have, but then at least from my side, I would like to give you one final kind of like advice or just recommendation on the user adoption mindset. I would ask for you not to be afraid of questioning or challenging the things that you're doing or how you're doing it, and try new and old tricks, always keeping in your mind the objective of what you want to do.
Yeah, that's a very good tip. Thanks a lot.
Yep.
Okay, if there are no questions on the line, then I would really like to thank you for your attendance, and I hope that this was of value. We are going to send, of course, a thank you email out with the link to the recording to this webinar. And we would like to hear your feedback about this content. Was this useful, or would you like to have more in-depth ways how to actually build a growth hacking system on user adoption, also for your organization? But thanks a lot for your attendance and have a good rest of the week.